Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something absolutely fascinating: the evolution of trust, ledgers, finality, and the Orina Protocol. We're going to look at how human civilization has historically solved the massive problem of trusting total strangers, and why our current financial systems are kind of breaking down under the weight of the new AI economy. Let's get right into it. So, to really understand where we're headed, we first have to ask, how do strangers actually trust each other? I mean, if you're trading with your next-door neighbor, trust is personal, it's easy. But what if you're trading across an ocean? That's a giant puzzle, and it literally built the modern world. Actually, get this. Our earliest recorded example of a trade dispute is a Mesopotamian clay tablet from way back in 1750 BC. A guy named Nani sent this deeply frustrated message to a merchant named Ea Nasir, complaining about a delivery of really subpar copper. It's basically a 4,000-year-old one-star Yelp review. And the crazy thing is, thousands of years ago, they were dealing with the exact same stuff we face today: wrong goods, delayed deliveries, and just this desperate need for a system that can finalize the truth of a transaction.
Now, the tools of commerce have obviously evolved a ton since then. We started out with those clay tablets in Mesopotamia, literally just trying to remember who owed what. By the Middle Ages, merchants started using paper bills of exchange, so they didn't have to lug heavy physical gold everywhere. Fast forward to the 20th century, and we built these massive centralized systems, think Fedwire and SWIFT, to finalize huge bank payments. And today, well, we are moving straight into decentralized smart contracts. The tech completely shifts, but the core goal is always identical: finding a verifiable way to lock in promises and finalize outcomes so that complete strangers can confidently do business. At the very heart of all those tools, from clay to code, is one simple concept. A ledger is essentially society's shared memory. You kind of have to think about a ledger not just as a boring book of numbers, but as vital infrastructure. A ledger cuts through the ambiguity by establishing agreed-upon rules for adding entries, fixing mistakes, and determining exactly who owes what to whom. When the rules of that ledger are clear, trade just flows seamlessly. But when those rules are slow or easily disputed, the entire system grinds to an absolute halt. I mean, we've all felt that panic when a bank transfer gets stuck in limbo for 3 days, right? Section 1. The intermediary bottleneck, when the system slows down. That brings us to the modern era, and quite frankly, a massive point of friction. Traditional banking tries to solve this trust problem by shoving human and institutional intermediaries squarely in the middle of every single transaction. A bank, a clearinghouse, an escrow agent, we're relying on centralized human organizations to tell us when a deal is truly finished. But when you compare those legacy systems to modern decentralized settlement, the contrast is stark. On the traditional side, you're relying on fallible institutions. It bakes in 1 to 5 days of latency, takes hefty fees, and hey, it only works during business hours. We saw the very real systemic risk of this when Silicon Valley Bank collapsed in just 48 hours. But looking at the other side, the Orina Protocol's Atomic Transaction Protocol, or ATP, it swaps out that human middleman for a smart contract. Settlement happens in minutes, it runs 24/7, the fees are incredibly low, and crucially, it is completely compatible with automated software agents. Section 2. Enter Orina Protocol and ATP. Okay, so how does this new infrastructure actually work under the hood? Well, Orina is designed as a settlement-first layer built specifically for real-world asset commerce. It allows independent parties to transact without needing a centralized platform acting as the enforcer. It's essentially a brand new foundation for bilateral trade. And the absolute magic word here is deterministic. Deterministic settlement means a system where every transaction reaches exactly one final canonical state based on programmable conditions, entirely independent of human intervention. So Orina replaces subjective human trust with hard mathematical certainty. And they aren't just crossing their fingers hoping the code works either. The ATP is formally verified using NewsMV with CTL and LTL specifications, which, to translate into plain English, the outcomes and rules are mathematically proven to guarantee they execute exactly as promised, no gray areas whatsoever. Let's actually trace the exact transaction lifecycle here. ATP strips a trade right down to its core transitions. First, you have intent, what someone actually wants to do. Second, authorized action, committing the assets. Third, bounded execution, evaluating the agreed conditions and deadlines. And finally, the final settlement state. By strictly defining these 4 steps, ATP guarantees a transaction moves from a mere promise to a final, irrevocable on-chain record without any confusion. Section 3. The 4 pillars of modern commerce. Now, it's one thing to talk about math and ledgers, right? It's another to see how it actually impacts how we do business out in the wild. So let's rapid fire through 4 real-world applications where Orina's deterministic settlement completely flips the script. Pillar 1 is cross-border over-the-counter, or OTC trade. Right now, if a business is buying internationally, they're usually stuck choosing between 100% risk of paying by wire transfer in advance or dealing with incredibly slow, ridiculously expensive bank letters of credit. With Orina's transparent on-chain escrow, the buyer just locks the funds, and once delivery conditions are met, settlement happens automatically. No expensive banks and no nerve-wracking advance payments.
Pillar 2 tackles the gig economy. And I just want you to let this massive number sink in for a second. 20 to 30%. That is the absolute fortune that remote freelance marketplaces like Fiverr or Upwork charge just to sit in the middle of a transaction. It's wild. By using Orina's trustless escrow, buyers and sellers can engage directly. You totally eliminate these massive centralized fees and completely bypass their notoriously slow and subjective dispute processes. You just replace the whole thing with neutral, predictable code. Now, Pillar 3 brings us to something really cutting edge, the AI agentic economy. We are rapidly entering a world where AI agents can actively hunt for suppliers, compare prices, negotiate terms, and actually execute purchases for us. But here's the massive roadblock. Machines have no identity. They don't have a social security number. AI agents literally cannot open traditional bank accounts or use legacy payment rails. The traditional financial system is completely 100% blind to them. But Orina perfectly solves this AI commerce problem. Through its AI Wallet v2 and Delegation Manager, a human root wallet can deploy a specialized smart contract wallet just for an AI agent. You basically give the machine bounded authority, which means it can only spend exactly what you explicitly allow. The agent goes out, automatically executes its trades, and when the cycle is over, all the funds sweep safely right back to your root wallet. The human always maintains a fallback safety switch, so you keep total control while the machine handles all the tedious negotiating and purchasing. It's a real game changer. And that brings us to our final pillar, real-world asset tokenization, or RWA. Physical goods, materials, or even services can be minted into non-forgeable, on-chain representations known as RWA receipt NFTs. This essentially attaches structured metadata to physical items. Think of it like a permanent digital certificate of authenticity glued to a shipping container or a piece of real estate. It creates an immutable history for auditing, for financing, and for secondary markets, literally turning the physical world into something the blockchain can track and settle flawlessly.
Section 4. The reversal. The oracle problem.
But hey, let's ground this conversation in reality for a second. As incredibly powerful as deterministic settlement is, code cannot completely solve the physical world. We absolutely have to address the hidden limits here. Because while Orina is essentially perfect for digital service deliveries or AI-to-AI transactions, physical cargo still runs straight into the oracle problem, meaning if a container of copper arrives at a port, someone in the real world still has to crack open the box and verify it isn't just full of rocks, just like Nani and Ian Nasir had to do way back in 1750 BC. Plus, we have to acknowledge that the legal recognition of these receipt NFTs still varies pretty widely depending on your jurisdiction, and the protocol itself is pending its independent third-party audits before mainnet. Code is flawless in a vacuum for sure, but it still has to shake hands with a very messy physical world.
Which brings us to this absolutely vital summary. Good infrastructure makes valid action easier, invalid action harder, and failure understandable. Honestly, from the clay tablets of 1750 BC to the smart contracts of today, the goal has always been exactly that, creating infrastructure that coordinates trust. The only difference is, we are now moving from systems designed solely for humans to systems designed so that both humans and machines can cooperate seamlessly together.
Which leaves us with this final thought to consider as the automated economy really starts taking over. The infrastructure of trade is literally changing right before our eyes. So when machines are the ones negotiating our deals and software is holding our money, how will you agree on what actually happened? I highly recommend taking some time to think about how finality and trust will operate in your own digital life going forward. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.